Hey there, you are watching the Son of the Morning Comics channel, and we're here to do another review. We're going to do a DC Black Label review of Plunge number 2 by Joe Hill, part of his Joe Hill House Comics line. Now, if you've watched any of my videos, you know that I'm kind of a sucker for Black Label, but I'm also not a horror fan. So I decided to take the plunge, and try out a couple of these Black Label horror type stories. Now, the other one that I tried out was the Low Woods, which I was really not particularly impressed with. That wasn't written by Joe Hill. I can't remember who it was written by, but I did also pick up Plunge number 1, and I did find the story interesting. It basically, there's this salvage crew, like a ship salvage crew, and there's a ship that I guess had gone under, shipwrecked years and years and years ago, and all of a sudden it's giving off like a distress signal, so they go to check it out, and then, you know, nothing good happens from that point. So I was actually quite entertained by that first issue, and it made me want to read the second one. So here we go. Now, at the end of the first issue, a couple of the characters decided that they wanted to go ashore, so they took a raft ashore. Now they go into this cave, and they find this dead guy who looks like he's in like a prison sort of garb, and he's clearly dead. They don't know how or why, but she thinks that it's that he's talking, that the dead guy talked to her. She's not sure, but she might be seeing things, but she's very convinced at this point right here. So, and her name's Mariah, by the way, Mariah. So, they kind of trying to figure out how long this guy has been dead for. They radio the ship captain, and they tell him they need him to come there. He's basically saying there better be a good reason for it. Of course there is. Now, here Mariah's talking about, I swear he talked to me, this, that, and they point out that the guy's throat was slashed. Could somebody with a throat slashed like that even talk ever in that situation? And the answer is probably not. But basically they decide they're gonna go photograph the scene, body bag everything up so that they can give it over to the police and stuff like that. Now you can see them here on the island, and there's, you know, they're still looking around, that sort of thing. Clearly there are other people watching them, and they're wearing the same sort of prison jumpsuits, or I'm assuming a prison jumpsuit as the dead man that they found. And that's kind of creepy, kind of like it. It's got a little bit of mystery to it. So let's give some credit where credit is due. This is Plunge number 2 by Joe Hill and Stuart Emonen, colored by Dave Stewart, letters by Darren Bennett, edited by Mark Doyle and Amedeo Tuturo, cover by Jeremy Wilson, and of course created by Joe Hill. So, now that we've given the credit where credit is due, they're on the beach now. It's now daytime, and they are deciding that they need to sort of do a little bit check around. If there's one guy here, there might be more. He might have been from the ship that they were originally going to salvage the one that was shipwrecked. So, you know, they kind of split up. A couple of them are going to take the raft with the body back to the boat, and then some of the others are going to search the island to see what they can find. So, I'm going to flip here, and so you can see they're all getting ready. They're all headed in their separate ways. You know, there's a lot of talk about how bad the coffee is. Apparently the coffee was made out of mushrooms, that sort of thing. So they go back, take the body back to the boat. Now this is where things get strange. And this is where it gets very interesting to me. This is what really sort of caught me. They're talking about here, he asks him, do you know how to do an autopsy? He says, I'm a nurse. That's not what I'm qualified for. He says, he understands, and he says, don't worry, I'll turn out the lights. Then, this guy, same guy, says to the body bag, hello, Peter. You don't look a day older than the photographs. We got your message. Sorry it took so long to get back to you, but you really should have included a return address. So, what did you find out here? I can't wait to find out. So, obviously this guy knows something more about what's going on than the rest of our team here. So I think that's really kind of interesting. So, you know, they're back on the ship. They're going to check out the shipwreck underneath the water. They got their little underwater drone. I can't remember exactly what they called it. The ship that they're trying to salvage is called the Derelith. And out comes this giant monster and eats their little drone thing. And they're like, did you see that? Yeah. You gotta love the reaction here. This guy said, did you see that? And his response is, I'm not sure, but I think a giant sea coochie just ate her ROV. Some funny stuff. Then we flip back to the land or the island, wherever they are, and there's these giant crabs there. And Mariah notices that they are the result, that they have, it looks like they've experienced an oil spill. They have all of this weird growth on their crustaceans, things like that. And then they see this giant one standing out on a rock in the water, and Mariah decides she's going to go into the water and check it out for herself. She wants to go get her hands on this thing because she wants to have a live sample to study, and then she sees that there's something there. Now, Clark here is very worried about this. He just wants her to come back. He's yelling at her, what, are you crazy? But she decides in the frigid water to go diving, and what does she find but what appears to be a totem pole? And so, like, this just, the plot keeps thickening here. Then, of course, it gets even worse, because this guy here, who was dead a few minutes ago, who was in a body bag, who one of the crew members was talking to, decides to break free and then, you know, take basically force this guy, or make it look like he took a sledgehammer to his own head. Not a great thing. And then, you know, quickly they flip back to the island, but this time we're not with Mariah. This is the other two guys here. And one of them notices that there's numbers sketched into the rock and that there's an opening. And so he crawls in there and he starts seeing all sorts of amazing sort of mathematical equations, hieroglyphs, things like that, evidence of society from a long time ago, which is pretty cool. Probably got ahead of myself there, but that's okay. We have a problem on the ship, as you can see, which was likely caused by our Walking Dead man. And you can see here that there's their fire, and they've got these water bombs, and they're doing their best to put out the fire. Now, once again, like I said, I got a little bit ahead of myself. He's down here, got all these numbers, all this stuff, hieroglyphs, history. It's really, really cool stuff. And then at the end here, he's saying, because, you know, the whole time he's talking to his buddy above, but he realizes that he's so far down that he can't hear him. He says, go ahead, Russ, scream your head off. You could be screaming for your life. Who's gonna hear you down here? But there appears to be hands coming out of the wall to grab him, and that is how this issue ends. So, not a fan of horror comics at all. Loved this comic. The first issue, like I said, I found it was interesting. This one, it got me. Now I'm interested. I'm not, like I said, not a horror guy, not a horror movie guy, not a horror comic guy, but Joe Hill is clearly a fantastic writer, and I really like this story. And I'm very much looking forward to issue number 3, whenever it is that we'll be able to get our hands on that. So with that, I'd like to thank you for joining me here on the Son of the Morning Comics channel. If you like this content, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. You can always visit me over on Twitter at sonofthemorning7. And have yourself a lovely day.